Please welcome to the stage Ambassador Paula Dobriansky, former Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs, Senior Fellow, Harvard University Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, and Senator Rick Scott from Florida, United States of America.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, and it's really great to see all of you. And Senator, just welcome to you, Senator Scott, from the great state of Florida.
That's right.
This morning, we're going to be talking about U.S.-China power competition. And I want to go first to an editorial opinion that you put forward for Fox News in March of this year. And in that editorial opinion, you advocated for freedom first, and you urged American companies to move forward with strategic decoupling from China. Could you explain to us what was your thesis and why you feel strongly about strategic decoupling?
You know what's frustrating is the Chinese government has made a decision. The Chinese government, not the Chinese people, the Chinese government has made a decision not to work with us. They've made that choice. So now Americans, we have to decide, so if China has made the decision not to work with us, why would we continue to help them build their economy, which only helps their Chinese government, who wants to build a military bigger than ours, which they're doing, who doesn't believe in human rights, which we do, who has already taken over all the basic rights of Hong Kong citizens, just poof like that, just took away all the rights and put people like Joshua Wong and Martin Lee and Jimmy Lai in prison, right, and shut down Apple Daily, and then now they're threatening Taiwan. Okay, so what I believe is Americans have to wake up and say to themselves, if you buy a product, if you do business with China, you're helping the government of China, who does not want to work with us and wants to dominate us. It's as simple as that.
I think it's an excellent thesis, and particularly COVID and what we witnessed during COVID and what happened to our American companies that are over there, the manufacturing, and our inability to get some of the equipment and products. Is that not correct?
Absolutely, but number one, why did the government of China decide not to be transparent? Right? They're part of the World Health Organization. We're all supposed to work together to make sure we don't have a pandemic that impacts the world. It did. And what we know is the Chinese government, we don't know enough of the facts, but we know what they've done is they've covered things up. And then on top of that, but we have to say to ourselves, do we want to be dependent on the Chinese government for our supply chain? Why would we? You wouldn't do that with your personal life. Okay, we shouldn't do it with our country. So whether it's our drugs, whether it's anything we need for a pandemic, whether it's the products we need to build technology, any of these things, we should never be dependent on somebody that we know is not going to be our partner.
Now, Senator, you have been very vocal about human rights issues in China. And very significantly, you've been outspoken about the persecution of Tibetans. You also have addressed the genocide of the Uyghurs, the Muslim Uyghurs, and this has continued and continued. What can the United States do? How can we be effective in really pushing human rights in China?
We have to talk about it. We have to be the people of the world that say we want everybody to have the same opportunities we have. I think most of the European Union wants the same thing. We want freedom for people. You get to make these choices. China doesn't believe in that, so we've got to talk about it. The fact they took away the basic rights of the Hong Kong citizens, the fact that they've got 1 million Uyghurs in prison, 1 million Uyghurs in prison, basically in concentration camps. We know that there's forced labor. We know that there's forced abortions, and they're doing the same thing to the Tibetans. It's the same thing. So what do we do? We've got to be vocal about it. We can't say, it's not happening to us. Look at, we just have to say to ourselves, if the same thing is going to happen to us if we don't stand up. And plus, it's what we believe in. We believe in basic human rights. I want that for my children and my grandchildren. I want it for yours. I want it for everybody in China.
Well, in fact, it's very fitting, your comments, because here we are, the beginning of the United Nations General Assembly, and this is certainly a platform, the UN, within which to actually speak aggressively about that agenda. And we know, unfortunately, China sits on the UN Human Rights Council, so it's...
That's hard to believe, right? Aren't they on there with Maduro in Venezuela? And,
Yes.
it's fascinating with the UN. And then isn't there a UN Genocide Convention? Hasn't China violated all that? Haven't they violated, they were not transparent with the WHO. The Chinese government has violated the World Trade Organization. I mean, what have they complied with?
Well, you couldn't be more correct, and you certainly are a model for someone who has been out there, who has spoken to this issue, and is really determined to make sure that that narrative not is just from the United States, but is global and puts pressure on the Chinese. Let's go to Hong Kong. You just mentioned Hong Kong a minute ago. You know, Hong Kong is a thriving democracy, and now we know what has happened in Hong Kong. What are the kinds of lessons that we could derive from such a kind of authoritarian takeover that we have witnessed in Hong Kong?
First off, my heart goes out to the people of Hong Kong and what's happened to them. You know, I went over there when they started having the protests, and I met with the protesters. I met with some of the democracy or basic rights supporters, people like Joshua Wong and Martin Lee and Jimmy Lai and others, and met with business leaders. I met with religious leaders, and what China, communist China, the government of communist China was able to do, it's because we all were distracted and we did nothing about it. I mean, who is showing up to stop this stuff right now? And what did Charlie Lai do wrong, other than speak the truth? And now he's in prison, and his publication is shut down. So what the government of China has done with their national security law is basically you're at risk. If you go to Hong Kong and you say something against Xi, you're at risk of going to prison. I mean, it's just you can't make this stuff up. So we have to say to ourselves, okay, so if that's going to happen, what's next? And the next is Taiwan. I mean, they're already threatening Taiwan. They're infiltrating their airspace. They've been very aggressive at talking about what they're going to do in Taiwan. So we and the entire international community has got to be clear that we will support Taiwan, a thriving democracy.
Let's go to that. That's very crucial, and it's a topic that certainly the national security community has been seized with, is Taiwan. Now, you have advanced, you've advanced a Taiwan Invasion Prevention Act.
Right.
Share with us about the essence of that act. I know you've been a real advocate for getting away from strategic ambiguity,
right,
and really advancing the importance of strategic clarity.
Well, first, going back on China, one thing I think we ought to be doing is when you buy a product, you ought to know where it's built, what its origin is. I've got a bill called the Prime Act that would require us, require Amazon, Costco, all of them to say where these things are made. Because I think you as an American citizen, you'll say, hey, I know that's not good for me. Maybe I don't trust their safety record. Maybe I don't like their human rights. You make that decision. We unfortunately haven't gotten that bill passed yet, but I'm optimistic we will. With regard to Taiwan, the time for ambiguity is over. We have to say to ourselves, are we willing to defend Taiwan or not? I believe we should. I mean, I think we ought to be a partner with Japan. We ought to be a partner with South Korea. We ought to be a partner with Taiwan because they believe in what we believe in. They believe in basic human rights. They have democracies, and so we've got to work together with Australia and other, and hopefully with India, to stand up against the totalitarian government of communist China. And so mine is being very, very clear. We will defend Taiwan. It's as simple as that.
How do you see that going? Is that moving forward in the direction you'd like?
Well, until anything is passed, nothing is where you'd like it to be. So it's not passed yet. I'm optimistic. I've been in the Senate for 2.5 years, and nothing happens overnight. So you just have to fight it every day, and you have to take your opportunities when they arise to get what you believe in done. But I believe Americans agree with this. Americans believe, if you look at where we are today, Americans understand the communist China, the government of communist China is not our friend. We got it. We now know that they're totalitarians. We got it. So now what are we going to do about it? And that's what we got to get this done.
Senator, another topic that's really uppermost in a lot of people's minds happens to be the Olympics, and the fact that China is hosting the Olympics in 2022. What do we do about this? What do we do about it still being in China, and what do we do about the U.S. team?
First off, I'm really disappointed in the International Olympic Committee. they must not care about human rights. I mean, because I've been calling for those games in 22 in communist China to be moved, and the international Olympic community has done nothing, just absolutely nothing. So if you think about why should a country that doesn't believe in basic rights, a country that's committing genocide against the Uyghurs and the Tibetans, a country that just took the basic rights away from the Hong Kong citizens, is threatening Taiwan right now, right? And bragging about our debacle in Afghanistan. Why should they be hosting the Olympics? Now, if you're going to go now, are you going to be safe? Can you say anything? If you say the wrong thing, are you going to be put in prison? Are athletes going to be safe? Are our sponsors going to be safe? Are Americans going to be safe? So I think the International Olympic Committee needs to move the Olympics. They shouldn't be boycotted. It would hurt our athletes. What happened in the Olympics before in 80, I guess it was 80, that was wrong. So not boycotted, but they need to be moved. And they can be.
We have about a minute left, and we have an audience that's full here and also by virtual, who have business backgrounds, governmental backgrounds, we have foreign nationals. What advice would you give to any of them who are part of this Concordia group as to how they can make a difference, and make a difference particularly on this issue of U.S.-China competition?
Sure. Well, first off, I want to thank Matt and everybody at Concordia for putting this together. I think they do. Their conferences are good, and I think they do a really good job bringing leaders together. I think we all have to understand that long-term, the society we want our children, our grandchildren, our co-workers to live in, we have to create it. And Peter Drucker said years ago, the best way to create the future, to predict the future, is to create it. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure we create a future that we want our families and our co-workers and everybody to live in. And I think we can do it by talking about the right things.
And this is certainly a great platform for that. Senator, it's terrific that you could be with us this morning. Thank you so much for coming. And again, I want to say it's great seeing all of you. Just really great. So please join me in thanking Senator Scott for being here.
Thanks, Paula.